What's up guys, it's WidgetTV here. Today, we're going to be going over every single behemoth in Dauntless's open beta. Two things before we get started. The first thing is that there's a few monsters currently left out of the beta because the developers are either doing bug fixes or tweaking these monsters. So those monsters are being left out of the open beta and they're also going to be left out of this video. The second thing is that this is not a guide to any of these monsters. This is just going to be a quick overview to show them off and show off little differences between each monster. Oh, and I guess there's one more thing, and it's that I'm leaving the rogue behemoths out because these are basically smaller tutorial monsters and they offer nothing new over the base monsters, and in fact they have less moves and abilities than the base monsters. So I'm just going to leave them out also. Alright, let's get started with the first monster that you meet in the Monstrous Verge. And that first monster is the Nasher. It has sharp, oversized teeth and a very big tail that you should be worried about. You should worry about that tail because this behemoth doesn't have very many offensive options. It will roll at you, it will try to stomp you, but basically its main offensive ability is its tail. It will jump up and try to smash you. So cut the tail off this monster as fast as you can, and because this behemoth comes so early in the game, it should be easy going. Alright, moving on to number 2 in the Monstrous Verge, we have the Shrike. The Shrike is an owl-like behemoth, and there are really only two things that you should be worried about with this behemoth, and that is its flying ability and the fact that it can make little ether orbs and shoot them at you. It can also make little tornadoes with its wings, but I never really found those to be a problem to dodge. Here's a little piece of flavor text or lore written by the developer of Dauntless for the Shrike. Graceful, precise, and predatory. It glides through the night skies, searching for prey to descend upon. This is going to be another easy behemoth to overcome in the early game. Alright, next up at number 3, we have the Quillshot. This is a warthog slash lizard behemoth. Obviously, the main feature with this behemoth is the fact that it has spines, and these spines are going to be its main form of offense. Whether he's shooting them up in the air and hoping they land on you, or falling over deliberately and trying to shoot them at you. During a fight with this behemoth, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get stabbed with one of these at least once. Alright, next up at number 4 is the Skarn. So the Skarn, to me at least, kind of looks like a chameleon. The thing that sets Skarn apart from all the other monsters is its rock armor. So it uses this armor both offensively and defensively. Offensively, he'll use it by jumping on his back and trying to impale anybody beneath him, but conveniently when he does this, he loses the armor for a couple seconds, allowing you to get off some good damage. And defensively, he'll go into turtle mode, and wherever he senses a slayer, he will either kick or punch out at that location. This is actually one of my favorite behemoths in Dauntless, just because I think it's kind of an interesting concept, and I just kind of like the way he looks. Alright, next up at number 5, we have the Chirag. So this behemoth is the first one that you run into in the Yonder Keys. This also happens to be the first monster that has an element that it uses and a weakness to an element. In this case, the Chirag does fire damage and is weak to frost. This behemoth's main move is to shoot fire out of its 4 vents. This can be easily avoided by running around with the fire, and gives a good time to get off some damage. But it also has some other scary fire attacks that should definitely be looked out for. And in fact, this is one of the first difficulty spikes in the game. I'm not saying that this behemoth is hard to beat, but you'll definitely have to go into this one knowing that it's not going to be a pushover. Alright, next up at number 6, we have the Embermane. Now, Embermane is a fire behemoth and is weak against frost. This guy likes to run around a lot. You'll find yourself chasing him around longer than you're actually damaging him. But when he eventually does slow down and stop, you can get some pretty good damage in on him. But watch out, when he stops, he almost always ends up shooting fire at you. I've got some flavor text here. It says unpredictable, explosive, and savage. The Embermane seethes with blaze ether. Embermane boasts a razor-sharp horn, claws that will turn a slayer into ribbons, and unsettling speed. This guy's a lot to handle, so make sure to take your time with this one. Alright, next up at number 7, we have the Grieve. So the Grieve is very similar to the Shrike. Really, the only differences here is the fact that it uses the same moves as the Shrike, but now they all have ice effects. This behemoth will be easier to kill than the last two that we talked about, but there is one thing that you should definitely be on the lookout for, and that is its combo. What this guy will do is quietly lower down your health to about half, and then he'll hit you, freeze you, and then hit you again, which most of the time will do enough damage to you to kill you. So I would recommend keeping your health well above half. Alright, moving on to number 8, we have the Drask. Now this guy can be characterized by its extremely long tail, and the fact that it can shoot lightning out of its mouth like a sniper. He can shoot lightning, so obviously his element is shock, and this guy's weak against blaze. But going back to the lightning that he can shoot out of his mouth, this lightning can be very deadly. It does a fair amount of damage, but really the scary part about it is the fact that it goes out to an extremely long range. So always be ready to dodge, or maybe just stand behind a tree. I've got some flavor text here for this guy. It says, big, bad, and fueled by the power of the etheric shock. The Drask is slower than other behemoths, with bone-crushing attacks that can level an entire party of slayers in just one strike. Alright, moving on to number 9, we have the Nazaga, a shock behemoth that's weak against frost. Nazaga does a bunch of moves that are similar to the Quillshot, except this guy also shoots out electricity, and make sure to watch out for the spike pylons that it drops. If you don't destroy these, they'll start shooting electrical orbs at you, and it's pretty annoying harassment. Fun fact, you can actually hit these orbs back in the direction they came from if you hit them with a well-timed attack. We'll be talking about that mechanic more later with different behemoths. Alright, next up at number 10, we have Pangar. This is a frost behemoth that is weak against fire. This behemoth can be characterized by its extremely large stature, standing well above most of the other behemoths. Pangar's attacks are fairly simple to avoid, because most of them are just physical attacks, but watch out for his transformation when he turns into Frost Pangar. This is when things get pretty tricky, but this guy is still fairly straightforward, but don't let that make you think that this behemoth is easy, because this is another fairly challenging one. Alright, moving on to number 11, we have Hellion. This is a Pangar reskin, but don't let that make you think that this guy doesn't have anything new going on. This guy is obviously a fire behemoth and is weak against frost. He also has a very interesting mechanic where you can break the scales off of his back, and when you pick them up, it'll give you a buff to your movement speed and attack speed. The movement speed buff is really nice because he drops a lot of lava and fire everywhere, and it's very useful to help avoid those. Alright, next up at number 12, we have the Stormclaw. Stormclaw is a shock behemoth that is weak against fire, and this guy has a bunch of different dangerous abilities that he can cast. Like, he can put down a shock fence where you have to break a pylon that he drops in order to get out of it, or this weird storm cloud that hovers above your head, and obviously he's a shock monster, so he's going to shoot electrical orbs at you on top of all that other stuff. This guy's a lot of fun to fight because of his diversity. Alright, so now at number 13, we have the Chirag. The Chirag is a flying behemoth that doesn't actually use any elements. It is, however, weak against fire and shock. One of the most dangerous things that this behemoth can do is call upon its swarm. What it does is surround its abdomen by presumably little Chirags. If you walk into the swarm at all, they will attach to you and debuff your movement speed and attack speed. These guys will also slowly damage you, so make sure to spam your attack button to get rid of them. Also, he goes invisible, which makes it hard to see what attacks he's using. I would just recommend to stand clear of him when he does this. Alright, next up at number 14, we have the Ragtail Nasher. Now, this is where there's another difficulty spike. These monsters from here on out are no longer friendly to newcomers, so keep that in mind. Alright, the Ragtail Nasher is actually fairly similar to the regular Nasher, but with one big exception. Just about every move that this guy does creates a shockwave that travels toward the Slayer. This might seem fairly minimal, but when it comes from just about every move, it can become a lot to deal with. I would recommend conserving your stamina as much as you can, because stamina is really important in this fight. Alright, next up at number 15, we have the Firebrand Chirag. Now, this guy is a fire behemoth that is weak against frost. This guy is fairly similar to the normal Chirag, but with a few new attacks, and a much more deadly flamethrower ability. With his flamethrower now, not only does flames come out of his 4 vents, but he also shoots off a bunch of other fire abilities at the same time, shooting fireballs and all sorts of other things during this. Make sure to focus his flame vents early, and the rest of the fight should be a lot easier. Alright, next up at number 16, we have the Shockjaw Nazaga. This is a shock behemoth that is weak against frost. This guy is also fairly similar to the normal Nazaga, except he drops more pylons and they're harder to destroy. On top of this, his big pylons now have shields protecting them. You will need to reflect an electrical charge shot at you by one of these pylons back at the pylon itself in order to break the shield. Then you can go on and attack it like normal. Next, at number 17, we have the Razorwing Chirag. This guy doesn't use any elemental attacks, but is weak against fire and shock. And this guy is one of my least favorite monsters to fight in the game. I can sum this behemoth up by saying that it does less moves that give you openings to do damage, and does more moves that will end up killing you or giving you that terrible debuff with the swarm. Stay away from this guy, he is very annoying. Alright, next up at number 18, we have the Frostback Pangar. Now, obviously, this is a frost behemoth that is weak against fire. This guy, in a lot of ways, is very similar to the normal Pangar, except when it's not transformed into the frost version, its normal attacks do frost damage by themselves. But in the end, the approach to kill this guy is just about the same as the normal Pangar. Watch out for his rolls and his very big tail. Alright, next up at number 19, we have the Deadeye Quillshot. This guy, like most of the endgame monsters, is fairly similar to its base form, except with this guy specifically, he will shoot spines out of his back much faster than the base form will, and he will shoot a lot more of them. This forces you to actively dodge them. With the normal version of the Quillshot, you could basically just dodge once and hope that they don't hit you, but with this guy, he shoots out so many of them that you have to actively dodge. So make sure to be on the lookout for quills falling from the sky. Alright, next up at number 20, we have the Bloodfire Embermane. This is the last of the reskins, and this guy is a fire behemoth and is weak against frost. This guy is another very annoying behemoth. He runs around so much that it makes it very hard to attack him. This ends up normally pushing the fight dangerously close to the time limit. Not only is this nerve-wracking, it simply takes a lot of time. And personally, I don't really like chasing the behemoth around the arena. Alright, next up at number 21, we have the Razecurie. This is one of the first true endgame behemoths. I'm going to keep this one short to avoid any major spoilers, but basically this guy does radiant damage and is weak against Umbriel. And I can sum this monster up by saying watch out for the lasers and the death plasma balls. Also, this monster gets harder the further you are into the fight. Alright, and finally at number 22, we have the Shroud. I'm going to go quick with this guy too, but basically he does Umbriel damage and is weak against Radiant. He can cover you in a black shroud that obstructs your view, and make sure to watch out for the nuke. Yeah, good luck with that one. Alright, that's all I have for all the current monsters in Dauntless's open beta. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you liked it, make sure to like and consider subscribing. It really helps out my small channel. Also, consider following me on Twitter. It's the best place for me to keep in contact with you guys. But anyway, this has been Widgeon TV. Thanks for watching, guys.